Hey guys, this is your Tag the Text video, and I'm going to be reading chapter 1 of The Giver with you. And I want to do this because I want to walk through how you guys are going to be tagging the text as you go through. And this is something that you're going to be doing the whole time that we're reading the book. Okay, so I'm not going to read every chapter with you. You guys can read, you're fine. And you can be listening to the audiobook, but I am just going to be kind of walking through and modeling for you what it looks like to tag the book. Okay, so while I am doing that, okay, I want to keep in mind the whole time I am reading, I want to make sure that I'm keeping in mind all of the things that I have been asked to watch for. So on the Tag the Text worksheet that was given to you in Google Classroom, you will see that there are 6 different characteristics of a dystopian society that I'm always going to be watching for. Okay, so as I'm reading, I'm going to be watching for restrictions. What kind of restrictions and rules were put into place in The Giver? What kind of rules were they having to follow in their society? Surveillance. How is the government watching their every move, right? Jonas is being watched. Everything he does, he's being watched. Fear of the outside world. This fear of leaving their safe little community. There's a great fear of what is outside of this community. Dehumanization, which is of course this idea that they are basically they're minimizing the qualities of humankind that we really believe make us who they are. Okay, so what kinds of things are dehumanizing, devaluing the uniqueness of mankind, right? And then conformity, making sure that everybody is exactly the same. Okay, if we're all the same, then we're all equal. And then that last one is a utopian illusion. They believe that they are in this perfect society, right? It's a utopia. It's a perfect world. It's an equal world. It's this beautiful, perfect world. But really, it's an illusion, right? And in The Giver, we're going to find out that it's an illusion. That last one, I'm not even going to give you an example of. And this one, we'll talk about it as we move on. But the utopian illusion isn't really going to come into play until later on in the novel, okay? So I'm not going to talk too much about it quite yet. All right, so as I'm reading to you, I'm going to be filling this in, and I'm not going to fill it completely in, but I want you to see how I would do that. So first of all, because it's week 1, I am going to be writing in red, okay? So I'm going to make sure, in fact, an easy way to do that is to copy and paste right here so that I know whatever I type is going to be typed in red, okay? But I'm going to read to you while we're doing that, okay? So feel free to follow along in your own book and be typing into your own document as you go along. You're welcome to just follow along and copy me for chapter 1, or you can come back and find your own if you would like, okay? But for this first chapter, I just want to read to you. All right, so The Giver, chapter 1. It was almost December, and Jonas was beginning to be frightened. No, wrong word, Jonas thought. Frightened meant that deep, sickening feeling of something terrible about to happen. Frightened was the way he had felt a year ago when an unidentified aircraft had overflown the community twice. He had seen it both times. Squinting towards the sky, he had seen the sleek jet almost a blur as at its high speed go past, and a second later heard the blast of a sound that followed. Then one more time, a moment later, from the opposite direction, the same plane. At first, he had been only fascinated. He had never seen an aircraft so close, for it was against the rules for pilots to fly over the community. Occasionally, when supplies were delivered by cargo planes to the landing field across the river, the children rode their bicycles to the riverbank and watched, intrigued, the unloading and then the takeoff directed to the west, always away from the community. All right, so that's going to kind of get us started here. Okay, and now let's look back and take a moment and see, was there anything in there that is going to fit within those 6 characteristics of a dystopian society? Okay, so let's look and see. Okay, so first let's look, for me, it's on page 1. For you guys, it's gonna be different depending on what you guys are using, if you're using the PDF or if you're using a hard copy, whatever it is, right? So the first one I'm gonna look at is in the second paragraph where it says, at first, he had been only fascinated. He had never seen aircraft so close, for it was against the rules for pilots to fly over the community. I'm going to title this quotation R for restrictions. And in my book, I've highlighted it and I've actually just put a little R circle, okay, just to annotate my book. You guys don't have Rosemont books. So if you bought your own book, if you went to Once Upon a Time or Amazon, if you bought your own book, mark it up, right? It's yours to mark up if you'd like, right? If you have a PDF, if you want to print it, that's great. If you know how to highlight your PDF, awesome, okay? So however it is you want to do this, or if you don't want to do any of that, you can just go straight over here to your document, your tag the text, and I'm going to find R for restrictions, and I'm going to type that quotation in here, right? Okay, so I'm just going to type, he had never seen an aircraft so close, for it was against the rules for pilots to fly over the community. All right, this is an example. I'm going to just put, for me, I have a page number, which is fine. Or if you guys are dealing with a PDF, you can call it just chapter 1. That's okay too. All right, whichever is fine. So now as I go through this, I'm going to begin to fill in these quotations where they belong. So this one is under restrictions. I'm not always going to type this in for you so that this video doesn't take forever. Okay, but that is what I would do. I found a quote in chapter 1. I'm going to type it in. I'm using red because anything I type in for this week number 3 assignment, I'm going to do in red. Okay. All right. Now, let's see. So he's concerned about that. He's concerned about that airplane. He's never seen an airplane fly that close because that's against the rules, right? That's completely against the rules for this. There's a lot of rules in his society. Okay, so picking up now. But the aircraft a year ago had been different. It was not a squat, fat-bellied cargo plane, but a needle-nosed single-pilot jet. Jonas, looking around anxiously, had seen others, adults as well as children, stop what they were doing and wait, confused, for an explanation over the frightening event. All right, so this part, Jonas looked around anxiously. This is going to be an example of fear of the outside world. They are suddenly seeing something that they've never seen before. And that is so scary to this community and to Jonas, okay? Because there's so many rules and restrictions in this society, they aren't used to people breaking the rules. And so this idea of somebody stepping out of what the norm is creates a sense of panic. Right? It's as if we are sitting there and we're, you know, sipping our tea outside and it's sunny and nice and there's an alien spacecraft above our heads. Well, for us, that would be frightening because it's so out of the norm, right? So for Jonas, this might as well be an alien spacecraft because he's like, what the heck is this thing? Why is it flying so low? Are we in extreme danger? Okay? Fear of the outside world, fear of anything out of the ordinary. Then all of the citizens had been ordered to go into the nearest building and stay there immediately. The rasping voice through the speakers had said, "Leave your bicycles where they are." I'm sorry, rasping voice through the speakers? So basically, suddenly they're like, oh, there's an airplane. And then this voice is like, get inside, go immediately, drop your bikes where they are. Can you guys imagine you're walking around La Crescenta and something strange happens and suddenly there's voices coming at you? I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever been to like Hawaii or even Northern California has some of this where they have tsunami warnings, right? And there's these speakers all over the city and they're only there for tsunami warnings. They'll do like a siren will come on if there's going to be a tsunami. But imagine you live in a society where there's speakers everywhere. And they're not to warn you about a tsunami. They're to tell you what to do and how to live your life, right? There is this surveillance, this like big brother that's always watching and telling these citizens exactly what they need to do, okay? And Jonas is going to respond. He's going to drop his bike and he's going to get inside a house as fast as he possibly can. And that's how this whole society lives their life, Okay, so that's going to be an example of surveillance. So I would go back to my document. I'm going to go back to tag the text, right? And I'm going to fill in, okay, surveillance. I found something here. I'm going to come here. I'm going to go down to surveillance, and I'm going to start typing. Okay, what did I find? Then all of the citizens, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so again, anytime I find something, I'm going to drop it into that document. Instantly, obediently, Jonas had dropped his bike on its side on the path behind his family's dwelling. He had run indoors and stayed there, alone. His parents were both at work, and his little sister, Lily, was at the child care center where she spent her after-school hours. Looking through the front window, he had seen no people. None of the busy afternoon crew of street cleaners, landscape workers, and food delivery people who usually populated the community at that time of day. He saw only the abandoned bikes here and there on their sides. An upturned wheel on one was still revolving slowly. He had been frightened then. The sense of his own community, silent, waiting, had made his stomach churn. He had trembled. He is so scared of this outside world and this idea of like, you know, what was that? Okay, can you imagine you see an airplane fly over your head and you're like, you're scared to death. You're going to be huddled inside, just so frightened of anything that is out of the ordinary. But it had been nothing. Within minutes, the speakers had crackled again, and the voice, reassuring now and less urgent, had explained that a pilot in training had misread his navigational instructions and made a wrong turn. Desperately, the pilot had been trying to make his way back before his error was noticed. Needless to say, he will be released, the voice had said, followed by silence. There was an ironic tone to that final message, as if the speaker found it amusing. And Jonas had smiled a little, though he knew what a grim statement it had been. For a contributing citizen to be released from the community was a final decision, a terrible punishment, an overwhelming statement of failure. All right, so I've highlighted basically that whole paragraph that I just read to you there, and I'm going to put a little circled D next to it because this is an example of dehumanization. Okay, they are releasing. This pilot made a mistake. Okay, he's in like driver's ed for pilots, right? And he made an error. And because he made an error, they're going to release him from the community. Now, you're going to find out more as the book goes on about what that means. So I don't want to give away too much here. Okay, but it's not a good thing to be released from the community. He's basically being let go because he made one bad choice. Okay, and you're going to find out later what that means. But there is this sense of dehumanization. Like you make one mistake and you're done for. You're out. I mean, it's like you're like a broken cup. Okay, you've made a mistake. They found a fault with you. You're a failure. Like you're no good to us. You're broken. You're useless. We're going to release you. We don't need you. Okay, so there's this sense of there's no value to human life. There's no, hey man, you made a mistake. Like let's teach you how to do this, right? Let's get back in. Let's get back in and teach you what went wrong, and we're going to help fix it because we value you, and we want you to learn from this, and we want you to move forward. But that's not how this community sees them. They see them as, you're a failure, you're broken, and you're useless to us. So we're going to release you from our society. Okay, so dehumanization on that one. Type that into my tag the text document. Even the children were scolded as if they used the term lightly at play, jeering at a teammate who missed a catch or stumbled in a race. Jonas had done it once, had shouted at his best friend, "That's it, Asher. You are released," when Asher's clumsy air had lost a match for his team. He had been taken aside for a brief and serious talk by the coach, had hung his head with guilt and embarrassment, had apologized to Asher after the game. Now, thinking about the feeling of fear as he pedaled home along the river, he remembered the moment of palpable, stomach-sinking terror when the aircraft had streaked above. It was not what he was feeling now with the December approaching. He searched for the right words to describe his own feelings. Jonas was careful about language. Not like his friend Asher, who talked too fast and mixed things up, scrambling words and phrases until they were barely recognizable and often funny. Jonas grinned, remembering the morning that Asher had dashed into the classroom, late, as usual, arriving breathlessly in the middle of the chanting of the morning anthem. When the class took their seats at the conclusion of the patriotic hymn, Asher remained standing to make his public apology as required. I apologize for inconveniencing my learning community. Asher ran through the standard apology phrase rapidly, still catching his breath. The instructor and class waited patiently for his explanation. The students had all been grinning because they had listened to Asher's explanation so many times before. I left home at the correct time, but when I was riding along the hatchery, the crew was separating some salmon. I guess I got distraught watching them. I apologized to my classmates, Asher concluded. He smoothed his rumpled tunic and sat down. We accept your apology, Asher, the class recited the standard response in unison. Many of the students were biting their lips to keep from laughing. Okay, so this idea, we accept your apology, Asher, the class recited the standard response in unison. This is going to be an example of conformity. Okay, so conformity is this idea that everybody is required to do the same thing, right? You are required to all repeat something in unison, right? You're going to see characters throughout the novel are constantly forced to apologize. Anytime they do something, there's an apology. And then there's a choral response like we do sometimes in class when I'm like, okay, like choral response, I need everybody. Okay, that same thing, except now we're all like, we accept your apology, Asher, right? How creepy would that be? Also, I mean, I know you guys are probably loving the fact that you're not ever marked tardy to class ever anymore, right? A bunch of you have mentioned that you love that you can like go use the restroom when you want. Like there's nobody to check in with, which I am also loving. Also loving the fact that I don't have to check to see if you're chewing gum. Like chew gum all you want right now, you guys. Like do it. Go for it. I don't have to try to figure out whether or not you have gum in your mouth, and we don't have to have the conversation about like, no, Miss Curtis, it's a cough drop. Like, oh my gosh, I don't care what it is. Chew gum, enjoy, live your best life. Side note, can you imagine those of you who are often late to my class, if you had to give an explanation to the whole class and apologize to the whole class, and then everybody had to in unison respond, we accept your apology, Asher. All right, so this is conformity. This is just this, it's another type of rule, but it's this idea that everybody has to be the same. Everybody has to do everything the same. There's this choral response. They're all going to be following the same model of living, okay? The same down to anything as simple as an apology. How do we deal with an apology? It's not simple etiquette. It's conformity because it's being forced upon you. It's not like, this is the nice, it's nice to apologize. That's a nice thing to do. This is a requirement. Okay, everybody has to respond the same way to events that are unfolding. I accept your apology, Asher, the instructor said. He was smiling. And I thank you, because once again, you have provided an opportunity for a lesson in language. Distraught is too strong an adjective to describe salmon viewing. He turned and wrote distraught on the instructional board. Beside it, he wrote distracted. Jonas, nearing his home now, smiled at the recollection, thinking still as he wheeled his bike into its narrow port beside the door. He realized that frightened was the wrong word to describe his feelings. Now that December was almost here, it was too strong an adjective. He had waited a long time for this special December. Now that it was almost upon him, he wasn't frightened, but he was eager, he decided. He was eager for it to come, and he was excited, certainly. All of the 11s were excited about the event that would be coming soon. But there was a little shudder of nervousness when he thought about it, about what might happen. Apprehensive, Jonas decided. That's what I am. Who wants to be the first tonight for feelings? Jonas's father asked at the conclusion of their evening meal. It was one of the rituals. The evening telling of feelings. Sometimes Jonas and his sister Lily argued over turns, over who would get to go first. Their parents, of course, were part of the ritual. They too told their feelings each evening, but like all parents, all adults, they didn't fight and wheedle for their turn. Nor did Jonas tonight. His feelings were too complicated this evening. He wanted to share them, but he wasn't eager to begin the process of sifting through his own complicated emotions, even with the help that he knew his parents could give. "You go, Lily," he said, seeing his sister, who was much younger, only a 7, wiggling with her impatience in her chair. "I felt very angry this afternoon," Lily announced. "My childcare group was at the play area, and we had a visitor, a group of 7s, and they didn't obey the rules at all. One of them, a male, I don't know his name, he kept going to the front of the line for the slide, even though the rest of us were all waiting. Oh, I felt so angry at him. I made my hand into a fist, like this, and then I held up a clenched fist, and the rest of the family smiled at her small, defiant gesture." "Why do you think the visitor didn't obey the rules?" Mother asked. Lily considered and shook her head. "I don't know. They acted like..." "Animals?" Jonas suggested. He laughed. "That's right," Lily said, laughing too. "Like animals." Neither child knew what the word meant exactly, but it was often used to describe someone uneducated or clumsy, someone who didn't fit in. "Where were the visitors from?" Father asked. Lily frowned, trying to remember. "Our leader told us when he made the welcome speech, but I can't remember. I guess I wasn't paying attention." "It was from another community. They had to leave very early, and they had their midday meal on the bus." Mother nodded. "Do you think it's possible that their rules may be different, and so they simply didn't know what your play area rules were?" Lily shrugged and nodded. "I suppose." "You've visited other communities, haven't you?" Jonas asked. "My group has, often." Lily nodded again. "When we were 6s, we went and shared a whole school day with a group of 6s in their community." "How did you feel when you were there?" Lily frowned. I felt strange because their methods were different. They were learning usages that my group hadn't learned yet, so we felt stupid." Father was listening with interest. "I'm thinking, Lily," he said, "about the boy who didn't obey the rules today. Do you think it's possible that he felt strange and stupid, being in a new place with rules that he didn't know about?" Lily pondered that. "Yes," she said finally. "I feel a little sorry for him," Jonas said, "even though I don't even know him. I feel sorry for anyone who is in a place where he feels strange and stupid." "How do you feel now?" Father asked. "Still angry?" I guess not," Lily said. I guess I feel a little sorry for him, and sorry I made a fist." She grinned. Jonas smiled back at his sister. Lily's feelings were always straightforward, fairly simple, usually easy to resolve. He guessed that his own had been too, when he was a 7. He listened politely, though, not very attentively, while his father took his turn, describing a feeling of worry that he'd had that day at work, a concern about one of the new children who wasn't doing well. Jonas's father's title was nurturer. He and the other nurturers were responsible for all the physical and emotional needs of every new child during its earliest life. It was a very important job, Jonas knew, but it wasn't one that interested him much. "What gender is it?" Lily asked. "Male," Father said. "He's a sweet little male with a lovely disposition, but he isn't growing as fast as he should, and he doesn't sleep soundly. We have him in the extra care section for supplemental nurturing, but the committee's beginning to talk about releasing him." Side note, they're talking about a baby right now. He's a lovely child. They give him extra care and supplemental nurturing, just in case you can imagine somebody talking about a newborn baby that way. "Oh, no," Mother murmured sympathetically. "I know how sad that must make you feel." Jonas and Lily both nodded sympathetically as well. Releasing of new children was always sad. because they hadn't had a chance to enjoy life within the community yet. And they hadn't done anything wrong. Aiden's here. He's going to listen to the story. You know, Aiden. There were only 2 occasions of release, which were not punishment. Release of the elderly, which was a time of celebration for life as well, and as for a life fully and well lived. And release of a new child, which always brought a sense of what could have been done. This was especially troubling for the nurturers, like Father, who felt they had somehow failed, but it happened very rarely. Well, Father said, I'm going to keep trying. I may ask the committee for permission to bring him here at night, if you don't mind. You know what the night crew nurturers are like. I think this little guy needs some extra care. Oh, of course, Mother said. And Jonas and Lily nodded. They had heard Father complain about the night crew before. It was a lesser job, night crew nurturing, assigned to those who lacked the interest or skill or insight for the more vital jobs of the daytime hours. Most of the people on the night crew had not even been given spouses because they lacked somehow the essential capacity to connect to others, which was required for the creation of a family unit. I'm going to stop there. This is dehumanization again, okay? This idea that people aren't allowed to be given spouses. They have to be deemed acceptable by the eyes of the community to be even given a spouse, okay? Which brings us to another note. Like, we're going to talk about how spouses are created, where couples come from. They were given a spouse. You didn't choose, you were given a spouse, right? And some people were deemed incapable of connecting with a spouse. So these people, this night crew, okay, they're given all the nighttime jobs. They can't be with people during the day, and they're not even allowed to have a spouse. Okay, so they're treated like animals. Okay, dehumanization. They're treated like animals. They're treated like, it's almost like breeding animals here. Maybe we could even keep him, Lily suggested sweetly, trying to look innocent. The look was fake. Jonas knew. They all knew. Lily, Mother reminded her, smiling, you know the rules. 2 children, 1 male, 1 female, to each family unit. It was written very clearly in the rules. Okay, so I'm gonna type that one down into rules, restrictions, right? This idea that not only was your spouse chosen for you, but you're only allowed to have 2 children, 1 girl, and 1 boy. Okay, that's it. That's all you're allowed. So this goes into restrictions. That's a pretty big one. They have complete control over everybody's family unit. Hey, Aiden, can you keep it a little quieter? Rummaging through the kitchen. All right. Next, Mother, who held a prominent position at the Department of Justice, talked about her feelings. Today, a repeat offender had been brought before her, someone who had broken the rules before. Someone who she had hoped had been adequately and fairly punished, and who had been restored to his place, to his job, his home, his family unit. To see him brought before her a second time caused her overwhelming feelings of frustration and anger and even guilt that she hadn't made a difference in his life. I feel frightened too for him, she confessed. You know that there's no 3rd chance. The rules say that if there's a 3rd transgression, he simply has to be released. Jonas shivered. He knew it happened. There was even a boy in his group of 11s whose father had been released years before. No one ever mentioned it. The disgrace was unspeakable. It was hard to imagine. Lily stood up and went to her mother. She stroked her mother's arm. From his place at the table, Father reached over and took her hand. Jonas reached for the other. One by one, they comforted her. Soon, she smiled and thanked them and murmured that she felt soothed. The ritual continued. Jonas, Father asked, your last tonight. Jonas sighed. This evening, he almost would have preferred to keep his feelings hidden, but it was, of course, against the rules. I'm feeling apprehensive, he confessed, glad that the appropriate descriptive word had finally come to him. Why is that, son? His father looked concerned. I know there's really nothing to worry about, Jonas exclaimed, and that every adult has been through it. I know you have, Father, and you too, Mother, but it's the ceremony that I'm apprehensive about. It's almost December. Lily looked up, her eyes wide. The ceremony of the 12, she whispered in an awed voice. Even the smallest children, Lily's age and younger, knew that it lay in the future for each of them. All right, this is going to be conformity as well, right? This is something that they all do. There is a ceremony every year when all of the children together turn the next age. So Jonas is 11, which is why they keep calling him an 11, and Lily's a 7, and so Aiden, you would be an 8 if you lived in this society. We'd all call you an 8 because everybody who is 8 is called an 8. And you would all turn 9 at the same time, and you would go to this ceremony where you turned 9. Okay, so he's waiting to go to a ceremony where he becomes 12. All right, so again, this is conformity. This is idea that everybody does everything the same way. You don't even get your own birthday in this society. There's no birthdays. Okay, you instead, do you want to move your chair over here so you can? Okay, there's no birthdays. You instead all turn 12 at the same time, or you all turn 8 at the same time. Can you imagine that, Aiden? Would you like not having a birthday? No, you wouldn't like that? Okay, all right, so let's see. I'm glad you told us of your feelings, Father said. Lily, Mother said, beckoning to the little girl, go now and get your night clothes on. Father and I are going to stay here and talk to Jonas for a while. Lily sighed, but obediently she got down from her chair. Privately? She asked. Mother nodded. Yes, she said. This talk will be a private one with Jonas. That is the end of chapter 1. Okay, I have walked you guys through it. Okay, I'm going to hide Aiden now while I finish this. Okay, so I've walked you guys through this chart. I would have, as I said, I would have gone through and been filling out all these quotations that I've been stopping and talking to you guys about, right? So hopefully maybe you guys have been filling this in as you've been listening to me. And it's now going to be your job, please, to go through chapters 2, 3, and 4 and fill in the rest of this chart, just like we did with chapter 1 here, okay? I feel like chapter 1's a little slow. The book gets better. It starts picking up. It gets more and more interesting. I think you guys are really going to like it. So I know some of you may have even read it in elementary. We're kind of in this weird phase with Springboard where they're putting the book into our grade right now. I know some of you read it in 6th or 7th. Well, no, 7th probably, but 6th. So we're going to deep dive into it a little bit more, talk a lot more about all of these characteristics, and we're going to do some compare and contrast with it. So we'll do some interesting things with it. So if you have read it before, please make sure that you review it again, because I don't want you to forget everything that you've already read and be failing these quizzes because of that. Okay, I want you to do well on all those quizzes. So there's chapter 1. Please read 2, 3, and 4 by Monday, April 20th. Okay, so, and be filling this out. Again, this week you're filling this all out in red. All right? Okay, you guys, I am done now. Okay, and the rest of the chapters are for you guys. All right? Aiden, you want to say bye? Bye. All right, you guys, take care. Have a good week. I hope you enjoy the reading.